Hey, what's going on everyone? Today we have the patch notes or patch 17.4c. There were two different patches since our last video, one quick fix and then another bigger fix. Consequently, it changed the meta up quite a bit. So let's get into the summary of all the team comps and also go over how to play each and every single one of them. Right now, not too many viable comps out there. In the S tier, we have Vanguard Fast 9 and Samira Reroll. After that, we have Space Groove. This one's really good. You just need an emblem with it. Corki Riven, solid Fast 8 comp. Stargazer Xayah, same thing. Dark Star, same thing, except you also need an emblem to make it much better. And then lastly, we have Lissandra Reroll in the S and A tier. So we have 7 comps in here. Honestly, not too many that are that great. In the B tier, we got Vex Fast 9, Brawler Yi, Asol, Leblanc, things like that. Not as great as everything in the S and A tier. Also, Reroll. Apart from Samira, there isn't really too much reroll out there right now. So if you're a bit tired of set 17's meta, there's this other game I know of that's given a lot of new one-time rewards right now. And I'll tell you exactly how to get that at the very end. Deep within the roots of Talaria, where ancient oaths still bind the land, Grand Oak Pedrig rises. He's the living will of the forest, a towering guardian, and he commands the rhythm of every single fight. Every single turn, your team's gonna get stronger when you play him. He buffs up your allies, cleanses harmful effects, and also gets them to strike as a whole team. But in what game do you need all these effects in from your legendary characters? This is gonna be Raid Shadow Legends. What I like about this game is that you can pretty much play it anywhere, anytime. Cross-platform, mobile and PC, but if you have not started playing yet, I don't know what you're waiting for because the link is in the description to download the game, or you can scan the QR code on the screen right now. And guess what? The amazing rewards I talked about at the beginning, only available through these links. You'll instantly unlock a huge starter pack with the legendary Narma the Returned, and if you reach level 10, you get an amazing epic Uugo, one of the most valuable champs in the game. Then, you get to pick one of 5 promo codes for the free legendary champion of your choice. We talked about Grand Oak Pedrig, but there's also Turvold, Alice the Wanderer, Cheshire Cat, and Razzlevarg. I recommend doing promo code Wrath for Grand Oak Pedrig because that guy does literally everything. But this is only available after downloading via my custom link or QR code within 48 hours after downloading. And if you go directly to the App Store or use any other link, you will not get these packages that the raid team has given me. So make sure you use these, then use the promo code, and go out and smash everyone with your new champs and have a good time. But now let's get into how to play each and every single one of these comps. Let's start off with Vanguard Fast 9. We have the standard version and the Leona version. The Leona version got nerfed a bit, but it still is viable. So pretty much what you have to decide when you start out your game is whether you can Leona 3-star or not. You don't have to do it. It got nerfed quite a bit, but it still is viable because sometimes when you Fast 9, you don't have time to roll down for a 4-cost tank. So in those games, getting a Leona, even though she's not as good as Nunu, her 3-star is like a serviceable tank to allow you to Fast 9 and get all the 2-star legendaries, which honestly is going to be a bit more important for you. But you always need a tank. So I don't care how you guys do it. Get Nunu, get Leona, whatever. So your carry options are going to be Vex, Sona, or Bard, any of those 3. Preferably at least 2 of them because you need multiple carries in your game. So the ways to do Fast 9 right now is to either full win streak. You could do that with stuff like item augments to help you get beefed up in stage 2 and 3, or you can take the super econ augments and just brute force the Fast 9 that way. So one is more flexible. Like when you're win streaking, you could do all sorts of different stuff. And if you get your streak broken, you could always pivot to something else. But alternatively, with the super econ augments, especially if you ever get like a gold start, you can easily go into level 9. You're just not going to have too much life. But pretty much for items for your carries in the backline, just make sure you have Void Staff and Morellonomicon. Doesn't really matter who has it. Pretty much your secondary carry is going to be carrying those items. But the key items on each unit for Vex, it's going to be the Rage Blade. For Sona, it's going to be the Jeweled Gauntlet and at least 1 Nashers. And then for Bard, it's pretty much just going to be any AP items that he can possibly hold. But Fast 9 itself isn't that difficult. I'd say it's like around medium difficulty because if you choose the correct spots to play it in, the execution isn't that hard. But pretty much you could just get to level 9, roll down, hit your legendaries, and pretty much call it a day after that. The most difficult part is just navigating the early and mid game and knowing when to actually commit to this. That's pretty much all there is, but If you can get to level 9 with maybe like at very minimum 40 gold, preferably something like 50 or 60 with like 20 life left, you should probably try to go for it because the payoff is pretty good in those situations. But I have the full game plan listed out on the website down here. It walks you through every single stage, bunnymuffins.lol/meta. But that's going to be one of the premier comps out there. Next one up we have is Samira Reroll. This comp is super duper fun to play. It's one of the only reroll comps we have in the S and A tier right now, and it's super strong. So Space Groove in general, very good right now because everything else got nerfed. This got buffed a little bit, and Samira is back. Her itemization is going to be the Spear, Shojin, Last Whisper, and Deathblade. You could build some of the other stuff down here too. Most notably, something like a Giant Slayer is a good replacement for these items. But pretty much her build is like decently static. But the build is just 7 Space Groove, add in Bastion with Shen, add in Sniper with Xayah, and then you naturally get Vanguard with Blitzcrank and Nasus here. But when you're level 7, you're most likely going to be playing 5 Space Groove, just because getting Sniper in is going to be pretty important for Samira. But what people normally do is they just run Ornn main tank, Samira main damage dealer. 3-item Ornn is really nice because he makes one of them Radiant. And then if you have a secondary carry, drop your items on Xayah. Red buff double Krakens is a solid way to build her, but honestly you don't need too many specific items for her. I'd prioritize the red buff, and then the other 2 items is just whatever you get during that game. For everyone else, like, no one else really matters in this comp. Like Blitzcrank, you could throw Thieves Gloves on. In like the super late game, he can be used to help your team out a bunch, but don't worry about him too much. If you're doing a 3-cost reroll, it's very hard to get 2-star legendary along with 3-star Ornn, 3-star Samira. So that's why you don't put that much attention into Blitzcrank, but obviously he is going to be good. But for augments, you want pretty much any reroll augments. So Prismatic Ticket going to be good. Anything that gives champion duplicators also going to be pretty good too. But when do you want to go this comp? If you have a lot of swords or a lot of econ or early Samira drops, that's going to be your direction to kind of play this. So pretty much at the beginning, play a strong Space Groove opener. So that could be Samira from Orb. You play her as 1-star. Get Nasus out there. Maybe you have a Teemo or something like that. And if you have at least 1 sword to start the game with, that would be kind of my sign to just hard force this comp. Of course, you always have to look around to see who is contesting you, but this is what you kind of have to look out for before you start thinking about playing this. So after that, on stage 3-5, you want to try to stabilize with Samira 2-star and 5 Space Groove. This is going to be on level 7 most likely. And then after that, continue to slow roll for your 3-star upgrades. You generally hit 3-star 3 costs either late stage 4 or early stage 5. After that, level up, get 7 Space Groove in, and you are going to be competing for top 2 and oftentimes even winning the game. But pretty much the most important thing to go for, I mentioned this before, is just getting to 5 Space Groove in general. And also try to get perfect items on Samira. Again, we looked at her item distribution or whatever, or like her item stats. It's like there's a pretty deep drop off after the top 3, Shojin, Last Whisper, Deathblade. So getting best in slots on her is like pretty important. But next up we have is going to be the A tiers. We got Space Groove. This is another Space Groove comp similar to Samira, but this time you're going to be playing around 4 cost units. So there are 2 versions, 5 and 7 Space Groove. This would be in the S tier, but the thing is, you need an emblem for it. You need the Space Groove emblem. If you just hard force a Space Groove comp without it, it's not going to have the best results. We could do a little experiment here. So when we have Space Groove emblem and we have Nami and let's say Riven, that's a very popular comp combo. If we end up excluding the Space Groove emblem, it's going to change from 4.13 to 4.31. I mean, obviously you still can play 5 and 7 Space Groove with this Riven without the emblem. However, it's just going to be a bit worse than what it could be, you know? Obviously, if you have the Space Groove emblem, you get to 7 a lot easier, so that's why it's a bit different there. But pretty much you need the emblem. It bumps it up a tier, a lot easier to play. But the comp looks something like this. You got Vanguards in here, Blitzcrank and Nunu. If you have 7, you could even go sometimes 4 Vanguard, depending on what emblems you get, because Nasus and Blitzcrank are both Vanguard users. But this comp is decently flexible because you could get either Nunu or Tahm Kench as your main tank. Tahm Kench is a little tankier, Nunu's a bit better utility. So depending on what tank items you've built earlier in the game, like if you build Adaptive Helm, you know me, I love Adaptive Helm. If I build that early, I might lean a little bit more into the Nunu tank because he uses mana items a bit better than Tahm Kench. But if you have like Warmogs, Spear Visage, stuff like that, I'm going to lean more into Tahm Kench than Nunu. But the great news about this comp is that you could run both of them. Just make sure you're running Pantheon. Pantheon's really good because he gives Timebreaker for Riven and also Replicator for Nami. So running an extra Brawler with the Pantheon kind of is like a no-brainer, but you don't have to run Tahm Kench either if he is too contested or if you can't get him. You could run something like a Shen instead of him. So you could run like Pantheon just for Replicator and Timebreaker, and then Shen for Bastion with Ornn. And you also get the Shen sword, which gives your units a lot of extra stats. So this is the basis of the comp. Nami's build is pretty much non-negotiable. Jeweled Gauntlet plus double Nashers just gives her way too much casting potential, so you'd pretty much never want to deviate from that. Space Groove plus any 2 items. Like Riven honestly can use anything. You don't need Titan's Bloodthirster. You could play like Asterix as well. You could give her damage items. You could give her Hand Adjust. You could give her literally any item. You could give her Rabadon's Death Cap, you know? A lot of people don't realize that. You could literally put any item on Riven and she's going to do well. So prioritize the Nami items, prioritize the tank items. After that, Riven gets whatever you have left over. If you really don't believe me, we could head on over to the item section, type in Riven here, and you'll see that like pretty much every item performs the same. We could like scroll all the way down, like what's the worst item on her? It's gonna be stuff like Red Buff, Morellonomicon, Rage Blade, like obviously like stupid stuff like that you're never gonna build on her, but like pretty much every other semi-viable item, all the melee bruiser items, all the regular damage items, all the AP items, all the AD items, they're gonna be working on her, you know? If you went trait tree and got like a ton of traits, you could put all 3 of them on her if you really want to. She can literally, again, just use anything. But after that, in your super late game, you have Blitzcrank as like a super carry, or like your insurance policy later on. He can use both the Void Staff and the Morellonomicon pretty decently. Oh, and another thing is that if you do end up getting like AP Riven, it actually works out much better in this comp compared to other Riven builds because again, you are building AP on the rest of your other team. So that's a nice little bonus for her there too. If you had to tell me, would you rather have 5 Space Groove or 7 Space Groove? Obviously it's going to be 7, but it's a little more difficult to fit everything in because you need more unit slots, which again makes the emblem just that much more important because it's pretty hard to play 7 Space Groove with all the other traits that you want without the emblem. And also, you pretty much just always need a 4-cost tank. So it's either going to be Tahm Kench or Nunu. If you're doing 7 Space Groove, Nunu's kind of the easier one to play around with and add in. But very strong comp. You can play it while contested also, as long as you have the emblem, it doesn't really matter. But pretty much at the start of the games, play your strongest Space Groove opener. Gwen plus Talon is a popular combo. Very strong in Stage 2 because they are rogues. Rogues and melee carries in general just dominate Stage 2. And if you have Space Groove opener without the emblem, it's okay. You could just play it and just do very solid with it also. And then you don't have to commit to this line. You could always pivot into something else. And then if you end up getting the emblem later, you could fully commit and just hard force this. But after that, it just plays like any other Fast 8 comp. You just roll on 4-2 for Riven 2, Nami 2, and a 2-star frontliner. And if you happen to find Blitzcrank, fantastic news for you. You're going to have a pretty nice game after that. But pretty much my biggest tip for this comp is do not force this comp. Only play it if you have the emblem. Because if you force this and you get contested, the other person's probably just going to outplace you very handedly. And they will not die before you. So you can't wait for someone to die to get your units to be opened up and back into the pool. Because they just will not die before you if they have a better opener for it than you do. So that's kind of why you gotta be careful when playing that comp. A comp that is less dependent on emblems is gonna be the Corki Riven comp. It's pretty much the same comp in terms of like the core concept. It's just another Riven comp that's a 5 trader that's not Riven's trait. So we have 5 Meeple instead of the 5 Space Groove, and we're pretty much running the same exact type of traits on the left-hand side here. So instead of Vanguards, it's Bastions. You get the built-in Rogue because Fizz is going to be a Meeple Rogue. You get Time Breakers in. Milio's going to be good for that because she matches up with Fate Weaver with Corki. And then you do a duo carry. The 4 costs of Meeple versus the 4 costs of Space Groove. It's just a little bit of a different flavor there. But the main difference is that this comp is attack damage based. So Corki gonna take all the attack damage items. Like any sword item is really good on him. I like Last Whisper on Corki a lot too. Rammus main tank up in the front. The nice little bonus here is that your 4-cost tank is going to be one of the more powerful ones that is built into the trait. And then Riven just holds whatever Riven can hold. But this is one of my favorite comps because you can hard force this one, contrary to the previous one, because you just don't need any emblems. You just need a bunch of items to slam on everyone, and you don't really care too much after that. Also, this comp is pretty affordable. You don't have to run any expensive units in there. The comp itself is still decently strong. Like, obviously, it's not going to be as good as the Space Groove version, we could do a little comparison here. We could look at champion stats, we could type in forecast, and we could just kind of look at the play rates of Corki versus Nami. Like you could see Nami is a bit higher in the average placements, but they're played around the same rate, but like 0.1 does mean something. We could also kind of compare Riven in the stats. We could look at Riven's traits and then type in, let's do 5 Meeple versus Space Groove. Meeple does better because a lot of times with Space Groove, she gets to 7 because she has the emblem. And obviously, like 7 Space Groove is going to be much better than 7 Meeple because 7 Meeple, kind of not that great in my opinion, at least in the very late game. 7 Meeple is great in the mid game because you get to print units. But once you print whatever unit you need, you could always just drop down to 5 Meeple and just fit in legendaries on your board instead of the 7 Meeple. Because like in terms of combat, 7 Meeple not that great. The main power of it is that you can duplicate units and get free copies that way. Another good thing about duplicating units is that, like, again, in this comp, you can play 7 Meeple. You can just use it to stabilize your board so you don't have to roll as much. So if you are 1-off Rammus 2, like you have, let's say, Corki 2-star, Rammus 1-star, but you have 2 copies of Rammus, you could always just play 7 Meeple, get the 3rd copy of Rammus, and save all your gold, like you stop rolling. Get the Rammus 2-star from the Meeple 7 trait, get to level 9, and then roll for, like, strong stuff there. That's something that you can easily do with this comp, which, again, makes it more consistent. I'd say that this is, again, going to be the most consistent comp on the patch right now. So if you ever wanted to hard force something every single game, this is going to be the comp for you. Next one up, we have is Stargazer Xayah. This one's pretty solid too. Like, it is kind of hard forceable, but not really, because it really depends on what Stargazer constellation that you get. If you get one of the good ones that we have down here, then yeah, you can hard force it. But for other situations, probably not. We do have 2 versions out here. We have the Rammus version and like the every tank trait version over here. So in this first version, we have obviously 3 Stargazer. We got Sniper. Jhin's going to be the best one to pair up with Xayah because he's a legendary and he also reduces armor and magic resist on everyone. But in the front line here, we have Brawlers, we have Vanguards, we have Bastions. So why do we want to do that? It's because Stargazer, you're going to be pairing up Jax and Nunu pretty much every time. So getting the good units of that trait is kind of like a no-brainer. After that, Aatrox is really nice to play around with because he gets Shred and Sunder on your team. So you don't have to build that extra item. That way you could do this red buff double Krakens build on Xayah, which is really, really, really powerful. And then you don't have to build something like an Even Shroud on your front line. And then also when you play Maokai, you can also have the option of playing Tahm Kench. Tahm Kench is great because he gives you a ton of gold, and he's also just a very solid unit in combat also. Because Nunu and Jax are pretty much non-negotiables, you always want to be running Vanguard and Bastion. An alternative to the board you see here is instead of running Aatrox and Maokai, you could run Shen instead. Shen is another way to get Bastion onto your board. And of course, he is going to be a 5-cost unit. And then when that happens, you open up an extra slot on your team because you do not have to run the Tahm Kench in those situations. And when that happens, you just play an extra legendary unit. Or you could even play something like Morgana and just get a bunch more tanks that way. And tanks are super important in this comp because you want to be getting stacks for your Kraken Slayer. Kraken Slayer takes, I think, like 15 autos to stack up. So it does take some time to get there. But when you do, she's going to be super powerful and going to be rocking a lot of stuff. After that, we have the Rammus build over here. Again, Jax and Nunu are going to be the 2 Stargazers that you play with this comp, but you can swap the tank lines a bit. You could go into this sort of Meeple setup with 3 Sniper in the back line, Gnar plus Jhin as the Snipers, Gnar with Rammus and Bard as the Meeples, and then Bard and Mordekaiser as Conduits, and also Mordekaiser and Jhin as Darkstar. It's a nice way to kind of get like a very interesting comp that kind of has perfect trait synergies on the left-hand side here. Now, if you want to have some fun, and let's say you get to level 9, what unit should you add in? If you want to keep the perfect traits, you can add in Samira. She adds in 4 Sniper and 1 Space Groove. But honestly, I wouldn't do that. I'd probably just play a Morgana. Or you just play a Shen, just run 3 Bastion, who really cares? Shen gives his little sword thing which buffs your team, and like I'd take that over a lot of other things in life. So you can either have fun or you could add more power to your board. That is going to be up to you. It's not my job to make your actual decisions in the game. I can only tell you what options that I think are going to be decent. But if you are obsessed with perfect traits, then yeah, it'd be Samira, but I wouldn't think too deeply about that. But what do you want to look out for when you are going for this comp? It's just going to be lots and lots and lots and lots of bows. You need 4 of them on Xayah, which is pretty hard to do, and extra ones can go on Jhin also. because Jhin can use stuff like Giant Slayer and whatnot, any generic damage item that you could build from bow that you can think of. But pretty much this is just going to be another standard fast 8 comp. You just have to look out for the Stargazer at the start of the game. They show it on like the bottom right side, right above the shop when you enter the game, so you could always just check there. It's pretty easy to do. Next build up we have is 6 Darkstar. Only played this with Darkstar emblem. Again, emblems are still pretty good in this patch. They unlock Space Groove, Darkstar. You can play with Meeple. A lot of the emblems that are more class oriented are pretty good too, like Vanguard, Bastion, Brawler. Any of those are solid. So pretty much if you see an option to get an emblem, you generally want to take it unless there's something absolutely ridiculous for your board. But in the Darkstar version, I'd say like the Riven version's the best right now. After that, I'd say it's a sniper version. Asol I'd kind of avoid right now, but these two versions are playable. I wouldn't say they're great, but they are playable. But if you get the emblem for it, it's going to be a no-brainer to kind of just hard force this, and you will not be too disappointed with the results. But pretty much all you want to do is decide on a carry. In Rogue, it's going to be Xayah and Riven. If you can 3-star Xayah, you can win the game pretty easily. But the most important thing to get in this comp is just getting to the 6 Darkstar power spike, because when you get to 6 Darkstar, you get the 2 black holes that you can place on your board. And the 2 black holes just give you immense front line that it makes it so that you don't need to run an actual real tank. Obviously, Nunu's good, but you play him more so for the CC ability because you have the 2 Darkstar things as kind of like your main tanks. They got a lot of HP. They nerf them, but they're still really, really powerful and very, very tanky. But if you ever get a lot of bows, you could consider going for the sniper version. If you have a lot of swords, go for rogues. That's kind of like the decision maker that you have whenever you play this. Another decision maker is what you're hitting as your forecast. If you're hitting Xayah and you get a copy of Jhin, then obviously, yeah, play the sniper version. If you're having trouble hitting Jhin, it's going to be hard to play the Xayah version, so then you just go for the Riven version instead. But on stage 4, you don't have all your items completed yet, so you want to focus again in the early game along with your tank items more so than like your random forecast carry, because 1, you don't need that many items on them because you're putting the emblem on them, so then you just need 2 of them instead of 3. And 2, pretty much like IE Last Whisper always belongs in this build. So worst case scenario, if you're going either build, it's going to be used in both of them. So that's kind of why I prioritize those items whenever I'm playing this comp. But overall, pretty solid. It's gotten nerfed a couple times in the past few patches, but Darkstar is still good, but again, only with the emblem. Next build up we have is Darkstar Lissandra. This is the only 1-cost reroll comp that we're going to be covering today. This one, you really only go if you have Darkstar emblem, Lissandra best in slot, and a reroll augment, and ideally a bunch of copies of Lissandra and Cho'Gath. And you could also play it with Expedition, which is pretty nice because you could use a lot of the rewards pretty well in this comp. But pretty much it's just 6 Darkstar plus Nunu plus Pantheon. Pantheon gives Brawler plus Replicator. Nunu just gives Vanguard and a bunch of stunning. And you don't really go beyond level 8 with this comp because it's a little expensive to reroll 1 cost and then go level 9. It is definitely possible to do, but if you ever get in that situation, all you have to add in is just any random 5-cost unit or any unit that fills out any trait down here. So it could be something like a Riven, for example. Riven gives you Rogue and also Timebreaker. If you have items for her, you could itemize around that. If you have extra AD items or attack speed items, you could play around Xayah like we saw before. If you have Conduit, you can play Bard. Bard can get you a Dragon. You could just get Dragon and play Dragon if you want. Pretty much a lot of things you could do there, but don't stress too much about level 9. You could almost do anything. Like Morgana is always a good +1 whenever you're playing literally any comp, because she just gives you a bunch of extra tankiness, and her passive is pretty nice too. But pretty much like if you have a lot of Lissandras, try to play this. If you get Pandora's items or like that Kale God offering where you get component anvils every time you get a new item component, those are going to be the times when you want to play Lissandra, because you pretty much need her best in slot, which is going to be the double Nashor's Jeweled Gauntlet build. And in all other situations, I tend to avoid playing this comp because it's just not big enough a reward for the risk that you're going to be taking, because you're going to be doing a 1-cost reroll, which means you're going to be rolling on stage 3-1 a lot. And if you don't hit, it's pretty rough. So obviously, you want 3-star Lissandra during the roll down, but that doesn't always happen. I don't know the exact percentages on how often you hit 3-star 1-cost on stage 3-1. Maybe I'd give it around like 30-35%. But the good news is that if you have 2-star Lissandra, as long as you have like 2 or 3 items for her during stage 3 with 4 Darkstar, you're going to be performing just fine and you're still going to be winning a lot of rounds with her. But if you end up losing a lot during stage 3, you're probably going to bot 4. So that's why, again, I like highly stressing having a lot of Lissandra copies before you even consider going for this. But worst case scenario, you have 2-star Lissandra with 3 good items and you could still win a lot of rounds in stage 3. The absolute latest time to get Lissandra 3 though is going to be on stage 4-1. That's when you all in for her. Like if you don't hit her there, you just lose the game. So you have to just roll all the way down to 0 until you hit and kind of use that to kind of structure your game around that. But in the late game, 6 Darkstar, that's what you're going to add in as you level up. It just gives you a nice little front line. Not that you need it, Cho'Gath is super tanky, but it gives like a lot of good stats to your team. And it also makes one of your Darkstars huge, which obviously is what you want. Also, in the meantime, when you can't play 6 Darkstar yet, playing a random unit like Ross can be a good substitute, but obviously you want to pivot into the 6 Darkstar as soon as possible. But another thing is that Cho'Gath isn't 100% necessary. Like it is good to stack him early, but if you get a free Lissandra 3-star, like let's say you just have Lissandra 3, but you only have 4 copies of Cho'Gath, you can just, instead of rolling for Cho'Gath 3, just hyper level instead, and then go for 6 Darkstar because again, the Dark Holes are pretty serviceable tanks. So you don't need like a true tank in this comp all the time. But those are going to be the top comps right now. Obviously, other stuff is playable if you get like perfect spots for them. But in like 95% of games, I'd recommend just playing the S and A tiers right now. There's really no reason not to, because I do think they are like a pretty big step above the B and the C tiers. Like normally the gap isn't that big. Like normally I'm like, yeah, half the B tier you can play. But in this patch, I think it's pretty solidly these comps with like a gap between the A's and the B's. But if you have any questions on any of these comps, drop them in the comments below. I'll try to get to as many as I can. But also let me know what you guys want to see out of this channel in the rest of this patch. Some people wanted me to do some replay reviews. Some people wanted to see some other sorts of guides. But let me know what you absolutely must have down in the comments below, and we will try to get to them. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video. And also don't forget to check out Raid Shadow Legends, link in description and in the pinned comment down below.